And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, March 6th. I am Josh Engleman, and I am here to break down an 8-game NBA slate for you guys today. We've got a 7 p.m. tip-off, 3 games at 7:30, a 9, 2 10s, and a 10:30. We're going to be around all day. Before we do anything, folks, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. And then the big one, give a shout out to BetMGM, the sponsor of this show. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But first, good morning, everybody. What's going on? Nice to see everybody popping up here in chat. Coming off of last night's slate, I ended up finishing 20th. Had a little tiny bit of a shot to get a little bit higher, but I just couldn't get it done. Big stand on Alperen Şengün. I had about 50% last night. That was incredibly helpful considering he was the highest scoring player on yesterday's slate. Apologies for not being here yesterday for the show. We got off to a great start on Monday. I was all ready to go yesterday. Got my prize picks video out, which won, by the way. If you're not tailing my prize picks video on OddsShopper, you're making a mistake. But I got my prize picks video done. I got all my contender stuff done and everything out. I sat back down at 9:30, ready to go and ready to get all prepped for this show, and all of a sudden, whoosh, the power goes out, which is weird in my office because I've got a backup battery. Like my lights and things all stayed on. So I was just like, that's funny. Like, what just died in here? I thought the battery died, honestly. And then I heard the chirp of one of our smoke detectors, and that's when I realized that the power had gone out. So I had to quick scramble, message Greg, say, hey, man, I don't have power. Got all the texts from the phone company and the power company saying you're not going to have power for a while. And then we got back around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But I had to miss yesterday, and I was excited to be here and excited to break this one down. But alas, we weren't able to get it. So today, we're going to break down all 8 games. We're going to take a look at the best plays based on the results that I got from running sims. We're going to look at what just the base stochastic sims look like for today. I've already got that run as well on the back end. It's going to be a good one, folks. So I hope you guys are ready. I'm going to put my phone on the charger. I'm going to put my watch on my charger. And I'm going to get it started. Look, we're still going to pop into OddsShopper periodically through these games to see if we have any bets. I'll try to be a little bit quicker about that and only really focus on places where we have good plays on either the pick'em side or the sports betting side. But it's all important now. It's all, we want to take a look at those prop markets just because maybe that'll lend us a little bit of additional information on the DFS streets. To start this one off, though, we're going to hit every single game. We're going to lead it off with the Orlando Magic. They are 7.5-point favorites in Washington, 222 total. We're going to look at that right now. I've got the Sims tool up. I have favorited my 150 lineups in our Sim tool. I'm going to hop over to the exposures tab. We're going to filter this one down to Orlando. Now, this is what just the base sim does on Stochastic. What you see on the screen is me running the Sims tool with no changes whatsoever. I generated the contest. I ran the simulation using the stochastic projections. This is the output for the top 150 lineups. I've also done this on my end with my projections and loaded that into my sheet. So we'll hop between the two. And we'll break it all down starting now, I guess. So the Magic, big favorites here in Washington. Great spot, too, for Orlando. Not that I don't think we have to tell anybody that. Sorry, I'm very uncomfortable in my seat today. I don't like it. You would think Orlando would just be awesome because they're taking on Washington. The Wizards are 29th in defensive rating. They are 3rd in pace. But based on the scale of pricing right now for Orlando, I don't really see a lot that stands out. You know, we've got 10% ownership and 10% optimal rates coming into Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. I don't think anybody's going to be all that surprised to see that, but In my 150 lineups, I only got one share of Jalen Suggs and one share of Paolo Banchero. Now, we didn't have Markelle Fultz yesterday. He's not on the injury report today, so I assume he's back in. We don't totally know the status of what they'll do with John Isaac and Joe Ingles on a back-to-back. And Gary Harris is also questionable. We have some moving parts for Orlando that might open them up a bit. But like I said, I didn't really get them in my personal sim. If you want to see that here, one share of Suggs, one share of Paolo Banchero. This is a pretty standard rotation for Orlando. There's not a lot going on. If we look at it from the Sims perspective, we did get to 10% Franz and 6% Banchero. I think all that makes sense. I find the simulated player ROI on Paolo Banchero being negative 20% to be pretty interesting as a guy that maybe you don't want to get there. I just don't see a lot that I want to get. Like when I look at Orlando, I just don't see anything that I want to prioritize other than their two main plays. So now I don't have much else to say for Orlando. Like even if we lose Gary Harris and John Isaac sits as well, I don't really think we're going to create too much additional value here. So I'm going to hop it over to Washington now. I think that's just an easier thing to do. We want to try to focus a little bit more on the best things we have. Now, Washington, kind of similar, a little confusing, I might add. 10% ownership to Tyus Jones, 10% ownership to Kyle Kuzma, just shy of 10 for Richaun Holmes, and then just single digits for everybody else. Only Tyus Jones and Kyle Kuzma made it into double-digit optimal rates as well. The big piece is that there is no Marvin Bagley for today. He is already out for the Wizards. The question becomes, what do they do at center today? You assume Richaun Holmes is going to step into more playing time. I went to 22 minutes. We have him on 21 on the site. We don't totally know for sure what their mechanism is going to be. Do they just go small and run with Kyle Kuzma at the 5? Do they want to go to someone more like Eugene Omoyuri, who's a flat 3K power forward center? I don't know. My assumption is we see a decent chunk of Holmes just because Orlando also is going to be running out, 26 minutes of Wendell Carter Jr. I think Washington probably needs some decent time coming out of Holmes, but if we get him as the starter, he's a $3,800 center. That will look like a pretty good value play. As I look at this game, it looks pretty similar to the way that our current Sims look. We have Tyus Jones looking like a pretty positive ROI option. He showed up in 19% of our Sims. It's 10% owned. That's some pretty positive leverage. Kyle Kuzma's negative player ROI isn't all that scary to me. 16% exposure, 10% ownership. So right out of the gate, the Sims tool's liking Tyus Jones and Kyle Kuzma. I tend to agree. I ended up getting 17% of Tyus Jones on my run. I got to 15% of Kyle Kuzma on my run. Both of those things look good. They are the clear two best options, which is kind of crazy because Orlando is the opposite of Washington. We're talking about 4th in defensive rating, 26th in pace. This is a bad spot for the Wizards, but they actually have more interesting plays than the Orlando side does. I also don't mind getting to Denny. Now, he is not someone that showed up in the Sims tool. That he had pretty sizable negative player ROI. I got to 9%, and I got to 13% of Richaun Holmes. So I have a much bigger stand on the Wizards side than I do the Orlando side. Now, it's not a massive stand. The most I have is of Tyus Jones is 17%, but 3 guys in double digits for the Wizards right now in a rough spot. It's not fun, but it is happening. There's just a little bit more value on the Wizards right now. If we're looking at this from a FanDuel perspective, Denny Avdia is currently projected for 29% ownership. He's 6,200 small forward, power forward, so $500 cheaper on FanDuel, and he has the MPE, whereas on DraftKings, he is small forward only. So that creates a little bit more of a disparity. That's the first game of the night. I don't really have much else to mention here for this game. It's not the most appealing one. We're going to get to way more appealing games in the future. Just to look at it, we're going to take a quick peek at the available betting lines on the NBA side for today. Do we have any, there aren't a ton of amazing lines that are out there. I don't see anything ranking at the top for Washington or Orlando. So I don't have much that I want to point out there. I'm going to take a quick look on the pick'em streets as well, just in case. I'm going to spend a little bit less time doing this, but I know some people loved it. Some people hated it. It's going to be an interesting balance. That's the best thing that I can do because it's worth it for us to look at these things. Denny Avdia, less than 8.5 rebounds on Prize Picks right now, is the second best option on Prize Picks. 5.2% expected value, 57% win rate. If you're looking to build out a Prize Picks card, go grab that Denny Avdia line right now if you can. Let me stretch out the shoulders here. There we go. Let's get a little bit more coffee in the old gullet too. Let's get to game number 2. This is where it starts to get more fun. We're going to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers, 2.5-point dogs in Atlanta, 216 total. Now, it's hard to talk about Cleveland or Atlanta because they're both on a back-to-back. Evan Mobley left yesterday's game with a sprained ankle. By all accounts, he's going to be out today. We don't know that for sure yet, but I am treating it like he's out. I'm also treating Max Strus like he's in. I don't know if that's the case yet. We're going to need that information. So there is a lot up in the air for Cleveland. As we look at it, 40% ownership coming into Jared Allen, 40% ownership coming into yesterday's hero, Dean Wade. Call it 25% owner, 20 to 25 on Karis LeVert and Darius Garland, and then single digits for everybody else. You can see the exposures in the sim tool right now. We got to 70% of Jared Allen. I got to 51, by the way. So either way, I'm over the field. We got 64% of Dean Wade. That shouldn't be surprising. He's $3,200 and power forward center, and I think likely to start and play 30 minutes. He's probably the best play on today's slate right now if we're just talking about ease of being rostered. Coming in off of a heater is just gross. Gross. But he's in 70% of my lineups, 64% from the sim tool. Now, the one disparity that I have that we're seeing in the sims, Karis LeVert popped in a big way. He's in 50% of sim run lineups. Really nice player ROI. I only got to 13%, so I am half the field. Now, as I look at it, we have Karis LeVert projected for 29 minutes. I went 28, but we have him at 34 fantasy points. I only have 30.5, so I'm a little bit more pessimistic on LeVert. Certainly a good play because you're going to get real minutes out of him. You get a position of shooting guard, small forward. That's the best position you're going to be able to find on the DK side. It's going to be a guy that I pay attention to because that's the first real disparity that I have with the Sims. And then we get to Darius Garland. He showed up in 35% of exposures for the Sims. He showed up in 32% of my lineups. So as I'm looking at it, I have 30%, 50%, and 70% of 3 of these Cleveland dudes in an amazing matchup. The Atlanta Hawks are dead last in defensive rating in the league now. They are number 1 in pace. All things looking great for Cleveland, and the fact that they're shorthanded makes it look even better. So I'm going to be getting to a lot of Cleveland. The swing piece for me right now is Karis LeVert. As of right now, I'm fading him by a little bit. We have him with neutral leverage. Like we have 30% optimal on Wade. We have 30% optimal on Jared Allen. But we have 24% optimal on Karis LeVert, which is right with the ownership. I'm very curious to see where I end up on him as the day goes on. But for right now, LeVert is the guy I'm lighter on. I want everything else from Cleveland. We also need this injury report in a big, big way. If we switch it over from Cleveland, we check out their opponents. This one's not as good. Atlanta Hawks, not a lot to like here. Cleveland's defense is good. They're 3rd overall. Now, that's not going to be 3rd if Evan Mobley's not around. It is going to come down a couple spots, but they're still better defensively than offensively. 10% ownership coming into Saddiq Bey, single-digit ownership coming into everybody else from Atlanta. DeJounte Murray getting a little bit of love on FanDuel, but nothing crazy. Bey got to 13% optimal. Clint Capella actually got to 12% optimal. Now, we're showing that as a positive option in the Sims tool. 14% exposure to Clint Capella, a little bit of positive Sim ROI for Capella. And then we also saw Saddiq Bey show up in 13% of our Sims. Not much else, though. Scattered amounts of Murray and Hunter. Atlanta just doesn't look very good. Now, I got a much bigger stand on Saddiq Bey. Think of him as like my alternative to Karis LeVert. I 2x'd Bey to get half the field on LeVert. I don't have much of a separation between the two. LeVert, a better per minute guy. Bey likely to play a couple extra minutes. He's a guy I get to pretty regularly. He's always going to be right in that 0.85 to 0.9 fantasy point per minute range. He's really all that I'm getting, though. A share of Bogdan, a share of Capella, 2 shares of Hunter, 2 shares of Murray, a share of Jalen Johnson. It's really just Saddiq Bey and nothing else for Atlanta. After 2 games, Cleveland is the first priority that we have. Now, if we take a look at Odds Shopper, do we have anything for Cleveland? Not that I see. Do we have anything for Atlanta? So Jared Allen, under 12.5 rebounds, is sitting out there at minus 125 on Bet365. You can grab that and squeeze a little bit of value if you need. I don't see anything else that we really like. On the pick'em side, we have Jared Allen under 12.5 rebounds at Odds Shopper. At Odds Shopper, at Underdog. That is the best underdog play that exists while we're doing this show. So if you play on Underdog and you're looking for pick'em options, Jared Allen under 12.5 rebounds is what you want. So schedule for the rest of the day. It would have been very helpful for me if I would have prepared this in advance. However, I did not. So deeper dive. That'll be myself and Bellman coming up at 5 p.m. tonight. We will break this slate down together. We'll kick it over to Live Before Lock at 6. And then playback. You guys showed up big time on playback for us yesterday. We had 800 people when we first started. We're going to be watching basketball games. We have access to League Pass. You guys can watch along with us. We're doing some chats. We gave away a month of Odds Shopper Premium last night. It's a fun way to sweat after the game's lock. We can go over news that pops up from 7 till 8 o'clock, any additional bets that show up that we like. It's just to be Greg and I and whoever else pops in, just chopping it up, talking basketball. So you don't want to miss it. You can go to playback.tv/stochastic. There's a link in the description of this video if you're looking for it. That will help you out a ton, but costs you absolutely nothing to come join us. You might even get a VIP pass from us and watch League Pass along with us. Also, 340 people in the door. Don't be afraid to hit that like button. We go to the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, not a lot to talk about here other than one option, and we don't even know if that option's real. For the Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson is questionable. He's been out for a while now. We got it. Everybody else that's been available now is available. No one's getting ownership out of other than Triple J. 16% owned because he's $7,800 and power forward center eligible. We got 40% of him in the sim tool at that ownership. We need him to play. I got 33% when I ran it for myself. That's all I got from Memphis. I didn't get a single share of anybody else. You can see we only got 2 lineups with Luke Kennard and 1 with Santi Aldama. The highest optimal rate in our boom bust tool is 5% to Santi Aldama if we ignore Jaren Jackson. Now, if Triple J ends up out, well, then we start looking at these guys a little bit differently. We start being able to think about a Lamar Stevens or a Trey Jamison at center. We can think about Jake LaRavia or Gigi Jackson. The point guard spot is kind of rough now. If Jordan Goodwin is not active, then you feel better about John Conchar. If Jordan Goodwin is active, then I think it's hard to get to Goodwin or Conchar. But that's going to be something we need to hear about later today. Jordan Goodwin is getting very close to his 50 appearances for a two-way. So if they don't have Goodwin active, then I think Conchar can play like 30 minutes and be a value option to get from Memphis. But if Goodwin's available, then I think that just takes a bite out of Conchar. Ooh, there's a nice little message. Taylor says, "Sup, Josh? Just got the NBA Sims tool today. Love to see it. Love to see it. Thanks for joining." And then Jeff Williams said, "Hey, Josh, if you have time, will you please list the sites that are legal in North Carolina? So far, I have found 6. BetMGM, DK, FanDuel, Caesars, 365, and ESPN. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I'm like 99% sure that we have everything listed on OddsShopper that has the correct sites that exist for North Carolina. So if you go to OddsShopper, there should be a section that lists out what's available from North Carolina, or an article that we did that outlines what North Carolina looks like. I haven't registered yet, so I haven't looked at anything yet. I'm going to do that either Friday or Saturday, depending on how my day goes. I'm going to put a pin in Memphis because it's Jaren Jackson or bust. We just need him to play. The Philly side is a thing. So Tyrese Maxey, we assume, isn't going to be playing because of that concussion. He was out yesterday. We ended up getting Cam Payne starting. Didn't play as much as we thought he would, but he's back again. 4,100 for Cam Payne, point guard only. He's projected for 60% ownership. We got him in 77% of our sims, and he's still like a neutral player ROI. So Cam Payne, once again, going to be a primary option. He's 4K on FanDuel and 75% owned there. Next game we got to talk about. Kelly Oubre ended up having a really big day. He came off the bench, but still played massive minutes. I only went to 30 minutes for him here. We did as well. He's 20% owned. Showed up in 53% of our sims. That's more than I got. I only had him in 37%. So I'm still 2xing Oubre. But the sims like him even more. And then you get Tobias Harris, 12% projected ownership, showed up in the sims 24% of the time, positive player ROI. I also got to 23%. So I see Philly kind of like Cleveland. I'm going to be getting to a lot of Cam Payne, assuming he starts again. Even if he doesn't, still a mildly interesting play. I'm going to get to a lot of Kelly Oubre, whether he starts or not. 40% of my lineups almost, 2xing the field. And I'm going to get to Tobias Harris, even at 7,800. He steps into a completely different role with no Maxey and no Embiid around. 25% usage, a 20% assist rate, close to 1.2 fantasy points per minute, especially in a matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies. I want to get to a bunch of Philly. The guy that I'm not getting to as much as I did yesterday is Kyle Lowry. I don't even know if Kyle Lowry will play today. This is a back-to-back. He played massive minutes. I assume he does, but we need to get this Philly injury report still. I got to 9% of Kyle Lowry, so I can't ask for too much more. But the 3 priorities are overwhelming for me. Payne, Oubre, Harris. With no Embiid and no Maxey, these are the guys you need to get to. We did get scattered amounts of Paul Reed, a couple shares of Kyle Lowry, and a couple shares of Buddy Hield on our sim run. But these 3 dudes, Payne, Oubre, Harris, stand out today as some of the more primary options. Cam Payne in particular, assuming he maintains his starting role, is a cash game lock. If we look at any potential bets for this game, we're looking for either Philly or Memphis. Tobias Harris, under 3.5 assists, does show up at Sugar House with a little bit of a value. We have it at the odds that are out there are plus 128. We have the fair line at plus 118. So if you can grab that Tobias Harris assist prop, it is viable for you if that's something that you're interested in. I do now want to touch on the super chat that just came in. Shout out to Will Griffey. He said, if you have time, I won $500 last night. Bankroll management advice. So this is going to be pretty generic because it's sort of a question of your own personal risk tolerance. What your bankroll is however much money you're willing to say, I can lose this and not reload. If you're willing to reload, then your bankroll is higher than whatever you think it is. Whatever your cutoff point is to say, like, I won't put more money in, that's what your bankroll is. So if in this case you won that 500 and your bankroll is simply $500, I would be looking to do, somewhere in the, like, I don't know, three. It also depends what you're doing this for. Like, are you trying to grind it? Is this just for fun? But like, 10% of your bankroll is $50. 5% of your bankroll is $25. I would probably set some sort of cap of like $25 a day at most, probably even a little bit lower. 1% of your bankroll is going to be $5. If you wanted to do like $10 a night, that will really help you build out your bankroll. You want to play in the lowest dollar contests you can find. That's going to be the softest competition you can get into. And then you probably want to limit your entries. So single entries or 3 max contests in the smallest contests you can find to try to incrementally build that bankroll up. Now, if you're just trying to take shots, if you want to throw, a single lineup into like a $15 single entry, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world, but it just immediately increases your risk of ruin. I would be looking to do single entries in 3 max contests in the like dollar entry range to $2 to $3 entry range. That would be my recommendation. But a lot of it has to do with just simply your personal risk tolerance. If you're willing to go broke faster, then you can risk your money a little bit more. But thanks for the super chat. Man, my coffee is hitting the spot today. We go to the Clippers next. The Clippers are 6.5-point favorites in Houston. It's a 224 total. It's a tough spot for both teams, honestly. Clippers are 12th in defensive rating. Houston's 6th. It's a very neutral game. It's one I want to watch. I kind of like both of these teams. You can see on the screen right now how the Sims tool feels about getting to the Clippers. We're projecting Kawhi Leonard for 10% ownership. I got to 9 in my sim run. We only got to 3 in the Sims, and they don't exactly grade out with good player ROI data. No one from the Clippers showed up with an optimal rate north of 8%. 7.8% is what we have for Kawhi. This Clippers team just doesn't look good. They're essentially at full strength. Only guy that's missing is Russ. You can see here, I got 9% of Kawhi and then just scattered filler from the Clippers. I'm in full agreement right now with the Sims tool. I see the Clippers as one of the worst teams that you can get to today. Just not a lot of priorities. Houston is pretty much the same, except I have one major stand. You can see this. We only got 6% of Alperen Şengün and nothing else from the rest of the Rockets. Now, we have 9.8% ownership coming into Şengün, 9.7% optimal rate to Şengün. It's 6% or below for everybody else. I got a lot of Şengün yesterday. I've got a lot of Şengün today. 31% Şengün for me. One of my major stands at center, just 8K. Definitely a more difficult matchup than he had yesterday. And we certainly don't expect him to come out here and score 83 fantasy points again like he did yesterday. I should have made more money, honestly. But I'm going right back to him. We're talking about an 8K salary on this slate. We need 50 fantasy points out of Alperen Şengün to feel good. I don't think that's crazy at all. We're talking about him doing that like, 25% of the time. I have him as a 1.4 DraftKings point per minute guy. 27% usage, 27% assist rate, 16% rebounding rate, knocking on the door of a double-double, 21 points, 9 boards. If I'm getting to something from Houston, it's Alperen Şengün. I don't really have anybody else that I want to talk about other than I did, in fact, play Jabari Smith on Prize Picks. This is one of my picks for today. Under on Giannis is the other play, but we did pick up a win yesterday. We're going more than 20.5 PRA on Jabari Smith. I don't love him from a DFS perspective, though. To me, not as good. If we look for Clippers or Houston lines, we do get one immediately. Kawhi Leonard under 2.5 threes is at Bet365 right now, minus 125. You can get 4.5% expected value by grabbing that one if you move quickly. That is the best line that exists for either side of this game. We're at the halfway point, guys. Do you know what that means? You guys know what it means when we're at the halfway point? It's very easy. We got to talk about BetMGM. They are the sponsor of this show. You can see the ad on the screen right now. Bet $5. Click the link in the description to sign up at BetMGM. When you bet $5, you will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's going to come in as 3 separate $50 bonus bets. The worst case scenario for you, the minimum deposit's $10. You got to put 5 down to unlock this deal. If you lose your $5 bet and all 3 of your bonus bets, you're only out $5 of your own money. If you hit any one of those bonus bets, you're already likely looking at north of $100 in your account. You hit 2 of them, you're looking at north of $200 in your account. And that says nothing for whatever you actually put in for your original deposit. This is a fantastic deal. I'm going to be pointing out options on other sports books, but I will be pointing out options on BetMGM where you can go immediately take advantage of this deal and then use OddsShopper to place those bets if you want to. Get the best line possible and allow yourself to grab the best thing you can find at BetMGM. It's a no-brainer to want to take advantage of this if you haven't done it yet. The links are below in the description of this video. You got to be 21 or over. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All righty. Let's keep it moving. We go to the 9 o'clock starts now. Chicago Bulls are 4.5-point favorites in Utah. It's a 223 total for Chicago. Got a little bit of love coming in here. That shouldn't be surprising. The Bulls are basically playing their starters like, other than Caruso, 38, 39, 40 minutes a night. So we have 25% ownership coming into Nikola Vucevic. 15 to 20 on Dosunmu, White, DeRozan, and another 15 on Alex Caruso. DeRozan, White, Vooch, and Dosunmu all had 10 to 15% optimal rates. Caruso came in a little bit below that 10% mark. You can see it in the... Now, this is going to be another big disparity. So, 33% exposure to Nikola Vucevic. Came in as the number 1 play out of the Sims for the Bulls. I only got to 9%. Now, we have Vooch at 44.5 fantasy points. I have him at 41.5. So I'm a couple points behind. That's what's causing me to be short. It's definitely going to be somebody that I look into. When I see this sort of gap between a big exposure to our sim tool in comparison to me, that's just letting me know that I found a guy that I need to dig into a little bit more. Maybe the site's a little high. Maybe I'm a little low. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. But it lets me know that I have somebody that I got to go check out. We got to around the field on Dosunmu, around the field on DeRozan, lighter on Kobe White, very light on Caruso, who does show up with negative leverage. Instead of me getting to Vooch, I'm getting to Kobe White. He's playing like 39, 40 minutes a night. He's 7,700. I got to 32%. So I basically just flip-flopped those two guys. He's a little over a fantasy point per minute, particularly in this spot against Utah. Jazz are 25th in defensive rating, 5th in pace. We've got a 24% usage rate on Kobe White, a 22% assist rate. Just really stepping into a role that I don't think the Bulls saw coming even a year ago. I don't mind getting to DeRozan or Dosunmu or Caruso. I'm right around the field on all of those guys. But the only thing that I see different, I'm flip-flopping Kobe White and Vooch. Our Sims tool is flip-flopping Kobe White and Vooch. So those are the two sort of like pivot guys from the Bulls. But ultimately, they look good. Utah, walking wounded, missing a bunch of guys. No Lauri Markkanen. No Taylor Hendricks now, who got hurt last time out. I'm missing somebody else. Who else? Who's the next guy out for Utah? Why am I already forgetting? Keontae George is questionable. Oh yeah, Walker Kessler is out too. So lots of weird stuff going on for Utah. That is a benefit to Chicago. You want to get to these guys. When you have 5 guys that are 15 to 25% owned, you know you're looking at one of the better team options for the day. If I'm picking one guy, though, for me, it's Kobe White. For our Sims tool, it's Nikola Vucevic. Now, as we hop over to Utah, as I mentioned, we lost Taylor Hendricks from the last game. No Markkanen, no Kessler. 33% ownership coming into Luka Samanic. He got the start last time out, and he's clearly, well, not clearly, you would assume he's going to get it again since they're more shorthanded. I gave him 24 minutes. We gave him 24 minutes. He's 37% owned, showed up in 58% of sims. That's going to be one of our highest exposed guys. I got him in 61%, so I am in full agreement. Luka Samanic, a $3,500 power forward center. Today is the day that we're playing Luka Samanic and Dean Wade as 3K power forward center options. Let me know how exciting you guys find that to be. I'll tell you how I see it. It's not exciting at all, but it's happening nonetheless. Now, 18% ownership coming into Chris Dunn. We got 13% in the Sims tool, but pretty negative simulated player ROI. Now, that's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but does stand out to me a bit. He's 4K point guard, shooting guard. We don't have a great feel for what he's going to do minutes-wise. We only projected him for 24. I actually went to 26. So I got to 17% of Chris Dunn. That's my second most exposed guy from Utah. I did get a little bit of John Collins. I did get a little bit of Colin Sexton, but these prices are starting to become a little bit more problematic. I still want to get to them. We didn't get to them in the Sims tool, though. 3% John Collins, 2% Sexton, 1 share of Jordan Clarkson. Normally, I get to a lot of Clarkson, but he's up to 6,800 now. As I look at it, assuming Luka Samanic starts again, he's very difficult to get away from. The value is really hard to ignore. Chris Dunn, I think, just steps into more playing time. We actually saw Chris Dunn play... No, that's impossible to be seen right now. Well, you guys can't see that. Chris Dunn played 28 minutes last time out. I went 26. If he gets 26, he looks like a good play. You can fill in with Sexton and Clarkson after that. The only downside for Utah here, Chicago Bulls are 18th in defensive rating, 28th in pace. This is a massive pace down spot for the Jazz. They lose 2.5 possessions below their average. That's why you're seeing someone like Samanic pop so much, because his issue is simply that he's not priced for his role. The matchup stops mattering at that point. Now, do we have any props that look good for either Utah or Chicago? Keontae George, under 2.5 threes, plus 100 on Unibet. You can get a 4% expected value. If you want to grab something, that's right there. Also, Ayo Dosunmu, under 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists. That would be your other option. Not an overwhelming amount of value. Milwaukee. I'm on the wrong screen here. Milwaukee Bucks, 4.5 point dogs in Golden State, 226 total. This one's pretty tricky. We have a Q tag on Giannis Antetokounmpo, which is obviously very important for what we do here. Not Memphis. That would be Milwaukee, the team that I'm trying to type in. Because if Giannis is out, then we're bumping up Dame in a big way. We're getting to more Bobby Portis, which looked great last time out when Giannis sat. We're certainly going to look more at some of the other options, Pat Bev in particular. For Giannis, he's 9% owned. Showed up in 13% of our sim tool. I only got to 3%. And it's funny because we certainly have enough value. If you're using Luka Samanic or you're using Dean Wade, you have enough salary to get to Giannis. I just don't think he looks all that great. And we don't even really know if he's going to be in for right now. I would assume if Giannis gets ruled in that the line on this one drops a little bit. I don't think it would be too crazy, but I think it could move a little bit. We just don't know his current status, so it's hard to speculate. We know that we want to go to the Portises and Lillards of the world if we get no Giannis. But if Giannis is in, you can see it on the screen right now. 1 share of Beasley, 1 share of Lillard. We're not getting to anything from Milwaukee if Giannis plays. He's 9% owned, or 9% optimal, 8% owned. The next highest rate for the Bucks is 4.5 to Beasley, optimal, 2% owned. You are not playing Milwaukee if Giannis is in, only if he's out. And that's exactly what I'm getting. 3% of Giannis, 1 share of Dame, 1 share of Beasley. Hope that looks familiar. It is just not that great of a spot. Now, on the opposite side for Golden State, the Warriors are unowned. 4% ownership coming into Draymond Green. The highest optimal rate is 7% to Draymond Green. If we pull up the Warriors in the sim tool, you'll get what I'm saying here. 7% of Draymond, 3% of Steph, 2% of Andrew Wiggins. By the way, Wiggins is back. Pajemski's back. This is a Warriors team at full strength, and they could not be less interesting today, even in a matchup against Milwaukee, which isn't that bad. As I look at this one, I'm not really getting to it. I got to 3% of Wiggins, 2% of Steph. Like, I'm just not getting either side of this. I think this is the worst game on the slate if Giannis plays. Now, the line, like I said, the line's 4.5. I see some speculation in chat about the line. S&P, you're hitting on it now. Milwaukee is 1.5 ahead of Golden State in net rating on the season on dunks and threes. So you should expect Golden State to be the favorite in this game, or at least right, or maybe like a 1-point favorite, right at a pick'em. I think the line is implying there's some ambiguity with Giannis, but 4.5 isn't all that crazy. Like, if it drops to 2.5, I think that makes some sense. This is a stronger Warriors team now than they were earlier in the season. So I think that net rating is at least a little bit like wiggly. So S&P, and I know you know this, but I'm just going to say this for everybody else, because people will think, oh, that line's going to move X amount of points because of Giannis. The problem in those scenarios is you really have to back out what you think the line is with him and without him, because that line is already showing us a 50% chance he's not playing. So it's sort of averaging those two things. So it's not just, you don't normally just get all of what Giannis is worth in a points perspective. You only usually see that in reverse, if somebody is in and then spontaneously out. But when it goes the other way, it doesn't move as much as you would think, because the line is usually already taking that into account a bit. So, I would expect it to move probably 2 points. 2.5 would look pretty reasonable. Maybe a little bit more, who knows? It sort of all depends on what the betting market thinks the odds are that Giannis is playing. I do think, though, it will be north of 4.5 if he gets ruled out. That would be a very comfortable statement for me to make. All told, though, I'm not playing Milwaukee. I'm not really playing Giannis, or I'm not really playing the Warriors either. I got one more thing that I want to talk about, guys. I hope you like this. You see it on the screen right now. I think it looks pretty good. You guys tell me. The promo code is Wemby. He's that smiling man. WEMBY is the promo code. If you want to get the Sims Max package, you can do that. Do you know how you can do that? By using that promo code, or by clicking the link in the description of this video. 50% off your first payment of a Sims weekly package when you sign up clicking that link and you use that promo code. We're only plugging this on our live shows. Again, this is the first payment of Sims weekly. You get 50% off. Hell of a deal. If you've been wanting to get in behind the paywall, if you wanted to check out the Sims tool, I think this is the best way for you to do that. To be able to get 50% off for a week, that really limits your outlay. If you're nervous at all about what we have at Stochastic, this is the easiest way for you to check it out. This deal is going to help you out tremendously. I'm going to pull this up on the screen here quickly so you can see it. But our Sims Max package for a week is $60, $59.95. You see it here on this right-hand side. You get it for $30 for the week. This will be the best price you're going to see to try out a week of our Sims tool. If you've ever been on the fence, use this promo right now. Putting it back up on the screen. The link is in the description. 50% off the Sims Max package weekly edition using the promo code Wemby. Take advantage, guys. I promise you. This is what you're looking for if you wanted to test out the Sims package. We've got 2 games left to go here. We have The Oklahoma City Thunder, 12.5-point favorites in Portland, 223 total. This one kind of looks like what everything looks like for Oklahoma City, although we do have 15% ownership coming into Chet. It's single digits for everybody else and single digit optimal rates for everybody else. As we look at the Sims tool, not big believers. 6% ownership to Shea. We got 5% of Chet, 4 of Dort, 3 of Giddey, 2 of Jalen Williams. That tells you what you need to know about Oklahoma City. Can you play the starters? Yeah, you can. Do any of them look great? No, they don't. Even in this great matchup against Portland, I think OKC sort of locks them down defensively. They don't need to be awesome offensively. It's the same situation for me. 7% Chet, 5% Jalen, 4% Giddey, 2% Dort, 4% Shea. It might as well be the same thing that we're getting out of the Sim tool to start. Just scattered amounts of the OKC starters, and then you can't really do anything else with it. It's the other side of this one that matters. And we don't really know what we can do just yet with Portland. So as I have it, 12% ownership is coming into Anthony Simons. He smashed last time out. I have 21%. I also got to 9% of Dwop Reith. But the big thing that we need to worry about for Portland, DeAndre Ayton is doubtful. Tumani Kamara is questionable. Jeremy Grant is questionable. Matisse Thybulle is questionable. These guys have been missing as of late. So it's very hard to really want to dig in on Portland because we've got 3 of their main rotation pieces questionable for today. We're talking 80 minutes plus the Ayton minutes. They're already without Brogdon and Scoot and Sharp. We need to know what's happening with those minutes before we figure out if there's additional value. But I am very happy to get to a little bit of Anthony Simons, even in a horrific spot. In the Sims tool, we got to 11% of Anthony Simons, spot on the ownership. So I got a little bit more, but nothing too crazy. I also projected him for an extra minute, which is probably helping out. But we barely got to Grant. We barely got to Reith. That's sort of how I see it while everybody is projected in. You're going to have to be around for late swaps for this one because this is a 10 o'clock start. And my guess is we don't have all of this information for Portland by the time we get there. So keep your eyes peeled and be ready to swap if you need to, because we could open up a little bit of everybody's favorite Ashton Hagans or Delano Banton. Like if we lose all 3 of them, Delano Banton's going to get a pretty sizable bump in minutes. He's 4,400. Jabari Walker will certainly look much better if Jeremy Grant happens to get ruled out. But for now, we can only speculate. If we look at Odds Shopper for anything from OKC or Portland, Chet Holmgren under 9.5 rebounds is the 4th best option on Odds Shopper. It's the line is set at minus 130. You can get it. Sorry, the line, our actual line is minus 144. You can get it for minus 130 at PointsBet. That's going to be close to a 5% expected value. Don't sleep on that. You could also still get that same line on DraftKings as well. That is the best option for this game. We're up to 480 people in here. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please do so. It is now time to close this one out. The Sacramento Kings are 3.5-point underdogs in Los Angeles. It's a 238 total. For the Kings, everybody that's normally available is available. We have 10% ownership coming into De'Aaron Fox, single digits for everybody else. We actually got to 15% Fox in the sim. I got to 18% of Fox, so I'm even a little higher. I tend to run a little hotter on De'Aaron Fox, but I'm happy to get to him here. But it's really just not that appealing of a team for the rest of it. You've got 9% coming into Sabonis. You've got this interesting dynamic between Sabonis and AD in the same matchup. But you can see it here in my sheet. I got 18% of De'Aaron Fox, 5% of Sabonis, 4% of Keegan Murray. These guys are, as they usually are, priced where they should be. Nobody ever misses time for Sacramento. So the salaries for their starters just stay the same over and over and over again, which makes it very hard to ever get to a lot of Sacramento because you never get any sort of salary differences that you're looking for. We have 11% optimal, 11% ownership to Fox coming out of the boom bust tool. That's the most of anybody, single digits across the board. There's just not a lot to talk about here from Sacramento. The Lakers side, to me, looks a little bit better. We've got 7% ownership coming into AD, 13 to Austin Reeves, and 10 to LeBron. I got to 10 to 15% of all three of those guys. The Sims tool kind of sees it the same way. 11% ownership coming into LeBron. I got to 15. He's 9,800, small forward, power forward, just shy of 30% usage, just over a 30% assist rate. Happy to get to LeBron, but negative player ROI is at least a little interesting. I got to 17% AD. We only got to 7 of him in the sim tool. I also have AD projected for 2 extra fantasy points. So 17% AD for me, 10% of Austin Reeves, 15% of LeBron James. I think the moral of the story for this entire slate is we've got a couple interesting value plays in Dean Wade and Samanic and Cam Payne. But that's kind of it. Like, if I take the filter off in the sim tool now and we look at everybody, our most exposed plays for today, Cam Payne, 70%. We got to 70% Jared Allen. Now, remember, that's with the assumption that we don't have Evan Mobley. But 64% Wade, 58% Samanic. 3 of our highest exposed guys in Samanic, Wade, and Payne are all just value plays. When you could lock in those sorts of value options, you tend to not see as much ownership going to anybody else because it opens you up to a couple extra. Like, most main stars look pretty similar. Excuse me. So you can kind of hot swap them into different lineup constructions. That's kind of what we're seeing. Like, we understand why Allen's getting the love. We understand why Oubre's getting the love with no Maxey. Similar story for LeVert. Jaren Jackson's the only guy that's relevant for Memphis. I'm not surprised to see the consolidation of where our exposures are on DK. I think it stands out the most. The guy that I like the least is a guy that has a little bit of negative player ROI, and that's Nikola Vucevic. He's the only guy that stands out to me as like, well, nothing's really going on in Chicago. Why is he getting as much love? Everybody else here, you can tell the story of Payne, Allen, Wade, Samanic, Oubre, LeVert, Jackson, Garland, Tobias Harris. All those guys have reasons that they should pop to the top of the list. I don't think Vooch has the same thing. So we can look quickly at the top lineup that showed up in our sim tool. I can't make that any bigger, unfortunately, but I can read it out. This was our number 1 sim ROI lineup. Tyus Jones, Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, Dean Wade, Luka Samanic, Cam Payne, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Nikola Vucevic. When you get Wade, Samanic, and Payne in a lineup, it is not at all hard to get to Giannis, and you can still fill that out with very real plays. I think that looks like a really nice lineup. It was also the lineup highest likelihood to win. Wasn't the lineup, though, with the highest likelihood to finish in the top 10. That is Garland, LeVert, Oubre, Triple J, Allen, Payne, Samanic, and Nikola Vucevic. Is there anything else that anybody wants to see before we get out of here? I guess I do want to also hit on this. LeBron James under 8.5 assists at PointsBet. You can get it at minus 130. That is a 4.5% expected value and is tied for the best bet you can find on OddsShopper right now. So grab that if you want to, if that's interesting. Do you guys want to see anything else right now? Anything else that is interesting? Big contest today on DraftKings. So if you're playing on DK, they have the 100,000 person $4 100K to first contest running again. So if you want to see that, feel free, or if you want to enter that, feel free. Lots of entries in that bad boy. I think that's going to pack it in for today. We hit our time marks perfectly. I think this was a pretty good breakdown. A reminder, please let me know in the comment section if there are things you want me to look at or focus on during this show. I'm learning with you guys. I want to do as much as I can to make this the best show possible. So I want to hit on as much as I can for you. Let me know in the comment section of this video things you want to see, things you maybe don't want to see. We can play with the format as much as we want. But for now, I think we're going to get out of here. Guys, it has been absolutely stellar. Reminder, shout out to BetMGM. Links in the description if you want to sign up. Bet 5, get 150. Wemby is the promo code for the Sims Max weekly package. You get 50% off your first week. That's going to be a $30 package now. If you've ever wanted to try it out, that's the way to do it. Good luck, everybody. Deeper dive later tonight. I know you're going to love it. Me and Bellman breaking it all down again. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining me.